Hyperia is now officially the tallest and fastest roller coaster in the UK, and in this video I'll be explaining why it's gonna take a goddamn miracle to beat that height record. The funny thing about UK theme parks is that they all have some kind of restriction. No park has the full capacity to do whatever it wants, unlike say Magic Mountain or Disney World, which has an entire country's worth of space at their disposal. This video, in general, will be talking about why tall roller coasters are extremely rare in Britain, and why building one, let alone one taller than Hyperia, will be a huge challenge. My name is Hyperia Pybro, and this is why nothing is gonna top Hyperia's height record. For now. This is a list of all major theme parks in England, and we are going to be eliminating them, starting with the ones least likely to do it, until we're left with the ones most likely to do it. And right off the bat, we're instantly going to axe Alton Towers. You either know exactly why I've done this, or you're confused as hell. Alton Towers is often seen as Britain's premier theme park, with one of, if not the best collection of roller coasters in the country. It's also one of the most profitable parks in the country. So money isn't exactly an issue. So why won't they build a tall ride? Well, I'm assuming almost all of you know, but Alton Towers has a height restriction. And I'm not talking about Discovery Kingdom being limited to 150 feet. I'm talking about a height restriction more crippling than almost any other theme park in the world. They can't go higher than the trees. That immediately kills the possibility of them building a hyper. But at this point, even if the restriction was lifted, I still don't think they'd do it. The fact that Alton Towers has been able to create such unique rides in such limited conditions is really a testament to the designers of the park. The fact that they don't go beyond the tree line is almost a part of its branding. If the restriction was lifted, yes, they could immediately build a B&M Giga or something, but I feel like that just kills the magic of what they've been able to accomplish. And I feel like the park would agree with me on that. So that's Alton Towers out of the picture, and next we have a bunch of parks that either don't have the money to build a hyper, or it doesn't appeal to their audience, or both. This Venn diagram gives all the information, starting with the parks that don't have enough money, Drayton Manor, and Flamingo Land. These parks I'm the least familiar with on this list, but looking at them, a hypercoaster just doesn't look to be in the cards. They've shown that they're willing to add some thrilling experiences to their parks, but a hyper is a massive investment that I just don't think these parks can afford. But imagine that Flamingo Land just randomly got a Mac hyper. It'd probably lead to people just calling Flamingo Land Diet Thorpe Park because they'd have two clones of rides from there. Next, we have one park that could maybe afford a hypercoaster, but it just doesn't belong in their park, and that's Legoland Windsor. One of, if not the most popular theme parks in Britain, and definitely very profitable. And even better, most of the park is built on a hill, meaning a chain lift could go up the hill, reducing cost before turning around and dropping it down to increase height. But it's Legoland. They aren't gonna build a hypercoaster. It literally makes zero sense given their audience. Also, I did say they have enough money, but they probably don't at this very moment, given they just invested in Minifigure Speedway. But yeah, they wouldn't do it even if they could. Same goes for these parks, except they can't. Polton's Park is not only a kids park, but a very small scale kids park. There ain't gonna be no hypercoaster here. It's a slightly different story for Chessington though. One thing I've always respected about this park is that, yes, it is a family park first and foremost, but it isn't afraid to spice up its kids' rides to make them a little more interesting. It challenges its young audience to get them used to more thrilling rides. If you know someone who's scared of roller coasters, this might be one of the best places to help them get used to them. And while the park isn't afraid to push its limits, a hypercoaster is a big step that they just can't afford. They've splurged in the past, but this is a different ballgame. Also, they don't have a lot of room. Not because of any natural reasons, they just simply don't own a ton of land, which would make things more complicated. It's here with these three remaining parks where things get interesting. Starting off with Universal Great Britain. This park hasn't even been officially approved yet as of the time I'm writing this, but all signs are pointing towards this plan going forward. God, I hope this ages well. Apparently, in some documents detailing the scope of the project, the maximum height of any structure in the park would be limited to 377 feet. Forget Hyperia, that's nearly as tall as Dragster, and is taller than Red Force. It would be the 5th tallest coaster in the world, assuming Falcon's Flight is open by then. However, pay attention to the small print. All Universal is saying is that the tallest they could possibly build anything is 377 feet. That doesn't mean it's a coaster. It doesn't even mean they're actually going to build that high. It's more so just a self-imposed height restriction. The other reason why I don't think this park will do it is because, to put it simply, it would be very out of character for Universal. Universal and Disney, as we're all aware, focus on theming in their rides. And while Universal aren't unfamiliar with roller coasters, they are with ones this high and big. The truth of the matter is that it's incredibly hard to theme a hypercoaster, and I wouldn't believe that trying to acquire national coaster records would be a high priority on Universal's mind. It's very unlikely, but unlike the ones we've already discussed, I wouldn't call it impossible. We don't know what Universal is going to do yet, and until we do, it's all up in the air. So, that just leaves us with 2 remaining parks. The park that now has the UK's height record, and the park the record was taken from. One thing that needs to be said about both of these parks is that they just don't have room. Thorpe Park is in the middle of a lake, meaning each time they want to expand, they have to take bites out of the waterfront. And Pleasure Beach is smack dab in the middle of Blackpool, meaning anywhere they'd want to expand, they'd have to buy it off people who already own that land. This is what I mean when I say that all theme parks in the UK are restricted in what they can do. Pleasure Beach is in the middle of a city, Thorpe Park is in the middle of a lake, and Alton Towers has a severe height restriction. And this is ultimately why there are only 3 roller coasters in Britain taller than 200 feet. Overall, all major parks in Britain are in weird places because, well, they didn't start off as theme parks. Pleasure Beach simply started as some permanent fair on the beachfront. Thorpe Park started as an educational kids attraction, and Alton Towers was just a manor owned by an earl. Imagine if Alton Towers never existed, and Merlin Entertainment asked you to pick the location of their new British theme park. If you picked the place Alton Towers now stands, you'd be laughed out of the room.
I'm free! Look! It's that idiot from the video again!
Let's use mockery to keep him inside.
I have an ouchie in here.
This is just the reality of the UK amusement industry. It's amazing we've been able to get such good rides with the hand we've been dealt. But anyway, it's time to explain which park between these two is more likely to build a coaster taller than Hyperia, and why it will be Pleasure Beach. Thorpe Park would probably love to extend their new record even further, but the truth of the matter is that it took a lot of time and money to finally get to this point. Bear in mind how it's been 12 years since the Swarm opened, which was the last major ride before Hyperia. If it took them that long to get a new Hyper, how long do you think it'll take for them to just do it again? Also, they already fit 2 Hypers in the park. It doesn't make sense to build another Hyper at all, meaning if they want to extend the height record, it'd have to be a Giga, and they ain't fitting no Giga coaster here. Something I've never realized is that you almost never see a park with 3 Hypers. I mean, it's possible. Cedar Point has Magnum, Steam, and Valraven, but you probably forgot Valraven was even a Hyper. I don't think Thorpe Park needs to make a taller ride, they need to make a longer ride that takes more time. Many people complained that Hyperia is too short, and while I don't think it's that bad, I do think the duration of rides is a problem that almost all rides at Thorpe Park have. They're all over too quickly. The only exceptions are Colossus, but only because you spend half the ride doing this, and Saw the Ride, but only because that one has multiple moving parts to it. Hyperia is gonna bring crowds, so for the next few years, I think Thorpe needs to focus on rides that will help reduce crowds as much as possible, instead of going for more records. And that just leaves us with Pleasure Beach Resort in Blackpool. Even though they did their best to hide it, I think it's safe to say that they were pretty peeved over the loss of their proudest record. And I wouldn't be surprised if they immediately started drawing up plans on how to get it back. There was one plan I've seen rumoured, And while there's no truth to having it go ahead, it pretty much doesn't exist, but still, it did make the cogs in my head turn. Some people theorize that an Intamin accelerator could launch out of the park above the road and then go up into a structure that's built on the beach itself. If this went through, it would at least be a giga, or maybe even a strata. Now, a few obvious roadblocks are holding an idea like this back. First off, I don't know if they own that section of beach, and I don't know if they could even legally buy it. Not to mention the fact that the Intamin accelerator is now discontinued, which, complicates things. Suppose Pleasure Beach wanted to make a launch coaster, which I'm sure they would. In that case, they'd either have to go with another Intamin model, more similar to the system that runs Falcon's Flight, or they'd go with S&S. Now, S&S have never made a super tall roller coaster before. Still, they have made fast ones, very fast ones, which is exactly what Pleasure Beach is looking for. But one thing's for certain, whatever they're gonna build, it has to be on the beach, because the park is just too cramped, too dense, and too packed to its eyeballs that a second giga here is just not gonna work. They could build one in the place the big one currently sits, but the fact that they've been gradually retracking the big one means that they intend to keep it around for decades to come, at least. And that's pretty much it. All options have been eliminated, and no park is currently in a position to challenge Thorpe Park. Not even themselves. However, the coaster industry in Britain is only growing, as shown by the attention of Hyperia and the positive reception of Universal Great Britain. Honestly, I think the most likely scenario is a company, whether it's Merlin, or maybe someone else looking to expand into Britain like Six Flags or Cedar Fair, or maybe both after their merger. They'll make a new park with plenty of land and no height restrictions, and it'll be the perfect place to put a B&M Giga. But for now, it looks like the Coaster of the Angels will be undisturbed in the heavens for the time being. Once again, my name is Hyperia Pybro. I have several other channels if you want to see more content made by me, and I'll see you next time.